Hey everybody, welcome back to the Firefighters Podcast. Today my guest is Jennifer Collins, who is JDC Events President and CEO. Today we are talking about an incredible new event called Equipped 2021, which is an ambitious new event connecting first responders. Before we jump in there with Jennifer, let's get a listen in from our podcast partners. First up is a massive shout out to our partner, William Wood Watches. Chances are you already know who William Wood Watches is, but if you haven't, you'll have seen them in GQ, The Times, Esquire, Forbes, The Telegraph, BBC, The Financial Times, Men's Health, upcycling firefighting equipment and utilising every single component that makes up the beautiful watches. They've won the Esquire Self-Made Entrepreneur of the Year. They were chosen by GQ Men's Health as the best men's watches to buy in 2020 and 2021. They've donated over 50,000 to international firefighting charities. Now, there's so many ways to go on and find out more about William Wood Watches. Head over to williamwoodwatches.com. Check them out on their Instagram. Check them out on their Facebook. They've got a private group if you are a member, if you have purchased one of their watches. So jump on over, take a look, whether it's the Triumph, the Valiant, the Bronze, the Chivalrous. And they've even got the Tunnel to Towers 911 watches. Honestly, if you are a fan of the emergency services, if you're looking for that gift for someone, whether it's a new recruit, whether it's retiree, get over to williamwoodwatches.com and take a look. I promise you will not regret it. Our second part of the podcast for today's episode is the incredible Hikes. Hikes footwear is made in Europe and they are an innovative, high-tech functional shoe manufacturer, and they meet the highest standards all over the world. They cater for the fire and rescue, the medical, workwear, police, military, forestry, streetwear, from our tactical frontline special forces operators to our firefighters boots on the ground. Hikes are keeping us safe in every single way. As part of their partnership with the podcast, they are giving away a pair of Hikes boots every single month. So after the podcast, be sure to jump over to our social media feeds, have a look for that post. We are doing it every single month, so get over there, check it out. There is no funny details to be had, so jump on over, check it out. Hikes UK, a fantastic partner of the podcast. Jennifer's coming to us from the USA, and in a similar vein to the podcast, we are going to learn about this new event that's going to be launched this year and how frontline emergency responders can collaborate and benefit from that shared cumulative knowledge to help us all face the challenges of the coming years. So if you're sitting comfortably, let's buckle up for safety, and I will see you crazy cats on the other side. Jennifer Collins, welcome to the Firefighters Podcast. How are you?
I am well. Thank you so much for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. So, Jennifer, you are President and CEO of JDC Events. But for everybody listening, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you join us from in the world today.
Sure. I am joining you from the Washington, D.C. area in the United States. And JDC Events, we produce engagement-driven live, hybrid, and virtual events for corporate, nonprofits, as well as government agencies within the states. As well, they do business globally as well. So that is something at any given time that we may touch upon too.
Beautiful. You first came sort of quirked my interest. I think I received an email from a member of the team in relation to the event that we're speaking about today, which is Equipped 2021, which is a new, ambitious event and way of connecting first responders all over the world effectively, but certainly from the States. And I was privileged to receive it, and it really piqued my interest to the extent that I wanted to connect with yourself and try and get a greater understanding, because I'm lucky to see behind the curtain of a few things, and I think how selfish it would be for just me to have this conversation. So I wanted to jump on the podcast and try and drag as much information out of you in the hope that we can get as many people on board for the event. So for anybody that is unfamiliar with it, what is Equip 2021 and why did you have a drive to do something like this with emergency services?
Yeah, Equip 2021 came out of the pandemic. And at my company, we have been working on behalf of first responders, organizations that support first responders for many years. And so we know this community. And so we started to see how much pressure and strain and continued stress they were under because of the pandemic. And here in the States, and even globally, there was some social unrest. But here in the States, we were really tagged with that. And so we wanted to find a way to help them, especially given they are already under pressure with their job anyway. And so it was just compounded. And so Equip came from that. We decided, you know what, let's start something where we can provide them with the tools, strategies, innovations, best practices that they would need to help to keep themselves safe, as well as the communities that they serve. But really, it was help to pour into them, continuing to give them the resources, continuing to help to inspire them, as well as to build resiliency, to, give them everything that they need to continue to push forward on another day. I feel that there aren't too many organizations that can help first responders. So that was the genesis of this particular initiative.
Now, I don't know what it's like in the obviously you guys are almost like a larger version of us in the UK, especially in terms of population, geography and logistics and stuff like that. But sometimes we're guilty of operating in silos in the UK, where you'll have incidents in different areas of the country. And I imagine, I don't want to put words in your mouth, I imagine you see a lot of that in the States. There's challenges and tragedies and stuff happening all over the place. And you referenced the pandemic then. But not only that, I mean, law enforcement and EMT and first responders have been facing challenges even before, the pandemic happened, like you say, in terms of things like civil unrest. How much collaboration and sharing did you see prior to this? Because I definitely feel there's a massive need for more events such as yours. Do you think that they operate in, because I know a lot of businesses tend to operate in silos. We don't like to share our working out and stuff like that. But the emergency services is surely different because we're all in the same game. But do you see those silos still?
I do. And that's one of the unique features of Equipped as well, is that we are focusing on all first responders. So the law enforcement, EMS, dispatch, firefighters, everybody to come together, because we believe and we know that there's cross-training. For instance, the mental health capacity or, just different ways of the scheduling or what have you. There's many, many different ways to cross-train and cross-pollinate in the sense of sharing information. But most shows deal directly with one particular service sector. And so you're talking specifically to them, which is fine, but there still is some overlap. And I think that's where, when you think about where we are in terms of a world, is more of us coming together that are different so that you truly can see the differences, understand how they impact you, and how, because of those differences, that we still can come together for the betterment of whatever position that you're in. So there's no competition in that sense. But to your point and to your question, it very much is set up as a silo type of structure.
My hope is, because I certainly think from a budgeting perspective in the UK, we're going to see less of that anyway, because we need to cross-pollinate. We need to collaborate more. I mean, in the US, you guys have been fantastic at, for example, with your firefighters and your EMT, they tend to cross over anyway. There's a lot of shared working. They will often live in the same premises, the same buildings, utilize the same resources. In here, our NHS and our fire service and our police are I don't want to say completely separate. I'm perhaps speaking out of line there, but it is a long stretch to get people to connect with each other. Do you think there's going to be more sort of multi-skilled first responders versus I'm just a police officer and I don't do anything else. I'm just a firefighter. I don't do anything else. I think I always look at these people as skilled frontline first responders, kind of how you articulate it in your message, really. And I feel like the more we can share those learnings, the more they're going to come in handy anyway, because I see these people becoming more multifaceted and more multi-skilled in what they're required to do to serve their communities. Am I right in saying that? Is that kind of right?
I do. I do think that to be the case, because, when you think about it, and actually one of the speakers that will be talking at Equip, he's a police chief within Oregon. And one of the things that he's going to be talking about is alternative policing, and meaning in the sense of bringing other people within the community together to help to go out on calls that potentially are nonviolent, that can decrease the level of participation for his workforce, so that more people, so that you can really help to not silo it, but help to just spread them out, especially if it's a mental health call or something along those lines. You bring in those experts to help you so that you aren't always sending the police in to do it, because it's not necessarily something with it's an early prevention. And so I say that to say, in response to your question, that I do think that there is going to be more of that cross collaboration so that it can open up those particular opportunities to be able to extend the reach, because we're running into problems now, and you may be doing the same in the UK, where the personnel, they're retiring,
I think when you de-chunk the role as well, like what you alluded to there, when you de-chunk the role, there are certain things, like you used a police and enforcement angle there. A lot of this can go out as, like you say, just going out as mediation effectively with some legal support, but going out to try and resolve and mitigate the damage that could then be done, rather than waiting for it to accumulate to get to the point where violence is imminent. And I look at it the same when I think of us acting as first responders. People have said before, why can't, myself included, why can't we go and support the paramedics more? And then you get people at the extreme end of the spectrum going, what if there's a stabbing, or what if there's a poisoning or something like that? So we're not talking about going to the absolute creme de la creme of what a paramedic or an EMT is required to do. Right. But people in the street can operate a defibrillator. We can go to a lot of cuts and scrapes, a lot of wounds, lacerations, stuff like that. We can treat them. We already have the capability. We have the stuff on the truck. So it's great to see. Again, I think you guys and girls are kind of leading the way with it, but we will catch up eventually, is my hope. Yes.
I think, it's just, it's hard to break out of the mold that you've always been in. Yeah. But when you're able to just piece step by step to just chip away at it, it can really bring some benefits.
Now, I was looking in the program and sort of what's been built around it. It looks like I'm not surprised, but it wasn't thrown together. It looks like there's been some real strategic stuff, and it kind of breaks itself down into 3 critical areas, if I was sort of reading it right. So these are health and wellness, we've got community, and we've got the tactics and the training aspect. So I wanted to briefly just jump into each of them and talk about what people can expect and how you see the benefits, what benefits you think they're going to come away with, whichever one you wish to start with. Where do you see those 3 key strategies coming through in this?
Well, it is a half-a-day program, so we don't have, multiple days and time to go after everything, of course. And given that we're doing this virtually, that probably is a good thing. And so we really wanted to focus on or hit upon those areas that are really, really critical at this point in time. And, the health and wellness piece is something that is just over the top in the sense of what they're experiencing. So we'll be talking about things about prioritizing sleep in that particular sector or that particular category, as well as really just focusing on how you can take better care of yourself. We have a firefighter that's going to be there and speaking, who started an organization called Food on the Stove, and it's to help the firehouses to prepare foods that are healthier, because the number one cause of the firefighter death is not what they're doing in terms of their position, it's heart disease. And so he wants to be able to really bring that to the fore to help them to understand the issue, as well as to provide those strategies on how to mitigate it as well.
You made a great point there in and around sleep. I was looking into it, and I think it's Paul, if I get the name right, Paul Nystrom, have I pronounced that correctly?
Yeah, Nystrom, Dr. Paul Nystrom.
My apologies. Yeah. He speaks about sleep. Now, historically and still now, we're a 24-hour service. We're always going to be, but also public, the communities that we serve are also now 24 hours. So how, without wanting to take the words out of Paul's mouth, how do you see us sort of expanding on the benefits of sleep and trying to convince people to get the right amount of it and the benefits that they can draw from it in what Paul's going to share during the event?
Well, think about this. And yes, this particular sector has been 24/7 for just its inception. We get that. But think about this, though. 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago, we did not have the impact or influence of social media. And so now you have this added distraction, if you will, that always sort of keeps your mind going, and you really can't look away. You can't get away from it, because it also is brought into the workplace. So it's just something that helps to do the work as well. So you have other factors that are now impacting it. Yes. I agree. I think more curse than gift, but that's just my personal opinion.
It's a very powerful thing. We've got to be careful with it. Some people talk about, no, it doesn't really affect me. I said, look, it's smarter than me. It's smarter than you. It's smarter than all of us. It's designed to be that way. Don't try and fight it. You've got to control your exposure to it, because it will get us off. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I think that's great, because I totally agree with you. Yeah. But that's the whole point, is that you can never talk about how to get enough sleep because of the way our society and culture has changed. Yeah. We're like not only a 24/7 culture, but we need instant gratification. We need everything now.
It's that dopamine,
and so how do you continue? Yes.
We just get it all the time.
Exactly. So how do you deal with that? Those sorts of things is what Paul will talk about in his session, on really just how we can meet the moment that we're in now.
Yeah. You also make a great point when we were speaking about civil unrest and things like that. Now, this has already reared its head several times in the UK, but funnily enough, my biggest concern is not only what the police face, because they're almost trained to do it. You made a great point in the program that I was reading about, self-defense for EMS, because you wouldn't think, if you were going to apply for that sort of job, that it is such a large part of what ends up being their day-to-day role, because they do come under some horrific abuse, which astonishes me and upsets me when I read it, because I have a number of close friends who are paramedics. The fact that they're now taking the power into their own hands and empowering people with this self-defense aspect, what sort of statistics are going to be approaches are going to be demonstrated with that? Because it's a worrying area of frontline responders that I think is only getting worse as well.
Yeah, the violence is something that has been going on for some time. And it just so happens that there's a statistic out of the CDC that about 2,000 EMTs, they face some sort of violent incident over the course of a year. And
that's a scary
the
number.
purpose of this, it's scary and it's not a part of the job. No. And so they shouldn't think that it's a part of the job, but that's some of the issue with this.
It's almost like it's like the worst kept secret. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, go, oh, well, it doesn't really exist. And then you see some of the horrific things that get done to them. We go to help gain entry for someone's called saying they're harming themselves. We will go and help gain entry to a premise. And then theoretically, we're supposed to just leave and let the paramedics get on with it. We've gained entry. But I'm always like, guys, we've got to stick around, because we don't know who's in there. And sometimes it'd be a paramedic by themselves, male or female. But I just still think, I don't know how it's done in the States. It just worries me.
Well, that's what's happening. No, really, your sentiments are, really appreciated, because that's exactly what's happening. And so they go to an incident or a scene or what have you, and they're in their ambulance. The ambulance is being abused. They're being abused. And it's all for many different reasons, perhaps. People are under the influence of whatever they're under the influence of. But there's also more calls that are happening now. And so that's bringing more of it potentially. But with this, it's also not necessarily something that's being reported. No. We really think that it's really the stats that you hear really don't reach the tip of the iceberg. No. It's really more of a problem than people realize. And so now people are really starting to get it out in the forefront and talk about it, because society as a whole, I really truly don't believe understands the reality of the situation. I really don't believe it.
We're becoming desensitized to it, in the fact that it is so common. And a lot of paramedics and stuff that I know are empowering themselves by just attending self-defense classes in their part-time. And it's great that they're doing that, and it's great that they're taking that initiative, but they shouldn't have to. And it's naive for us to go, oh, well, maybe it will get better, and maybe it's not. And we haven't got the resources to expect every EMT call, every paramedic's call to be attended to by a police officer as well, because that's just not realistic. Right. So this aspect of empowering them with self-defense, some people may feel differently about it. They feel like that's not the reason they joined the job, but it's great to see we're not just pulling the wool over our eyes, and we're not just pretending it doesn't happen, because it is a real concern.
It's a real concern. And that's only just one particular mitigating effort. There are other things that the departments, and they're looking at of how to, deal with the situation, but that's just one, because what's also happening with our paramedics and EMTs is that they are committing suicide at high levels, and because of what's happening on the job. And so that also bleeds back into then the mental health component and the importance of removing the stigma, so that they know that they can report it, and that they also know that they can get the help that they need because of it. So it's really deep. We're not going to solve it at Equipped per se, but it is something where we wanted to get into the conversation because it's important, and we know it's important.
It's sad that you say that, and it's honest, and I appreciate, and I agree with you. We've had a gentleman called Andy Bibby who's him and his company have ran a massive report on health and well-being, and there's some really scary statistics, because I think of frontline responders or frontline workers in general and suicide. In all honesty, what comes to mind first, and I think if you spoke to the public, they would go to military, only because they are taken out of their normal environment, they are deployed abroad perhaps. They see a tremendous amount of trauma. They then come back, and that transition has always historically, I'm not saying it's that way now, but we've not been very good at it. It's been very clunky, and it's been very difficult, very poorly coordinated, and so many people have fallen through the gaps and unfortunately chosen to take their own lives. It's so sad now to see that these people in our emergency services live and work in the country. They don't go abroad. They live within our communities. They're tremendously more accessible. We are tremendously more exposed to them, so theoretically we should be well aware of the damage that's being done to them, but we're not where we need to be now, and it's so sad when I do hear of stories like that. And you're right, you're not talking about a single event. It's becoming quite a worrying a number, and you're right, it's kind of been bubbling under the surface for, I personally feel, about 8 years maybe, but it's getting far too frequent for people to push it aside and go, oh, that was extenuating circumstances, or that was due to something in their personal life. There's too much crossover. There's too much correlation with all of these people are working in the sector, and we are seeing a debilitating health and well-being.
There's also just such, in terms of our society of it, there's a lack of decorum, in the sense of just the respect for people and respect for positions and roles that people hold. And so there's a lot of different dynamics that are impacting it. And so they really, truly need as much support as they can get, because it's going to continue to change. It's changed in the sense of it's getting worse. So we want to turn that tide. And so that's really what we're thinking, in the sense of, equipped and moving equipped forward. Equipped is not going to be just a one and done event. No. It's starting virtually, but it's going to be a launching pad for building community throughout the year. So these sorts of topics that we're talking about today are going to be something that we are delivering through blogs, through one-on-one subject matter expert interviews, through podcasts, through those sorts of mediums to really get that content out to support them throughout the year, so that we can continue to provide that resource so that they don't feel that they're alone.
And I think that it's important that actually it is done by somebody or a company or an organization that's kind of outside the emergency services, because when you were talking then and you were talking about society in general and civil unrest and decorum, I agree with you. And I feel like I'm going to make a reach now, which is we see isolated incidents where public figures of or theoretical authority, or even just somebody in uniform, because I'm not going to say that the police are at fault by anything here, but people associate police and government with power, and then we stand alongside, and we will always want to stand alongside our members in law enforcement, because that's what we do, and we're all a team. But the good stories don't get the exposure. And you referenced social media earlier. We see these aspects where people feel an overwhelming, passionate, like they've been wronged by the people that were supposed to protect them. And these are tremendously isolated incidents. The good incidents, the good outcomes don't get the exposure. And that kind of creates this idea that anybody in a uniform is there to subdue me, is there to suppress me, is not there in my best interests. And if we tried to do this ourselves, I don't know that it would be as successful, because it'd feel a bit hypocritical, like, of course you're going to say that, you're part of the emergency services. So I think it really does require some external companies and things like that stepping up and showing the best that is within the emergency services and trying to get that connection back, because I remember when I was a kid, you would see police officers, first responders as a source of good, and I still do. I've got 3 children, and I would encourage all of them, and they do, they would approach a police officer, a firefighter, anything like that. If they were in trouble and they saw somebody wearing a uniform, they go towards them, not away from them. And I sincerely worry that may no longer be the case for certain people. They may be being raised to see anybody in a uniform as something they should fear, and that is scary, because I would say the 99.9%, to make an exaggerated percentage, are there for good. They join the job for the right reasons, and they're acting with good values that we're trying to uphold.
Absolutely. There are certain instances where,
of course,
and we know that within every sector, within every part of our society, there are always those bad apples.
Yes.
But the one issue with that is that it tends to, in certain instances, overtake everything else. Yeah. We know that those particular areas that may not be good do need to be addressed, and that's just critical and understood. But I have first responders in my family, I know many first responders, and there are so many people out there with these special hearts of running toward the danger to help somebody else. And so we do need to remember what their role is, and that they truly are there to help you, and not focus too much on the other side that, yes, does happen, and we know it needs to be dealt with and addressed in terms of the bad. And it is big. But to not whitewash and paint the entire sector as such.
Yeah. Because people don't join the sector they certainly don't join it for money, and I don't think they join it for power or anything like that. If they wanted money or power, they would pursue something else, an entrepreneurial aspect or something like that. They join it because they want to try and make a difference, and I think that will always continue to be the case. We've just got to remind people, and I love that that's what you're doing with the event. Now, a big part of that for me is in leadership. And I saw in your notes as well, or in the notes that I've taken, that Reginald Freeman, I've looked at him before, Reg. He's a really interesting fella. And he's actually going to be doing a piece, a keynote speak on leadership from the fire service, in fact, as well, isn't he?
Yes, he is. And it trumps everything, in the sense of how you're going to lead, how people are going to follow. And so that's what he really talks about. He talks about culture, and he talks about really what you are bringing to the table in the sense of what do you expect me to be as a leader? Yeah. And, how can I support you as a leader? And so that's, those sorts of principles he'll be talking about: authenticity, communication, accountability, trustworthiness. Those characteristics are just so important in terms of being able to lead, especially in this role and how dangerous the role is. You want to make sure that people know that you're with them and help to bring them with you.
Now, a big part of Equipped as well, and kind of this ever-evolving change we've seen through the pandemic and the role of the first responder, I wanted to ask you about change because, a running joke always in the British fire service is firefighters hate two things. They hate the way it is and they hate change. So it's always difficult to make them happy. But with the world now, I always say the only constant thing is change. We are going to see technology and everything like that colliding and spitting out and evolving so much change consistently, and you're going to have to be that eternal student. But leading change is a very difficult thing to do. I've had to do it in a number of different things in my service. Sometimes I've done it well, sometimes I've done it poorly. Hopefully I've got a little bit better. From your perspective, you're effectively trying to lead change here in how we connect and how we collaborate. What are just one or two or some of the key factors you think are important when leading change?
If we had never experienced change before, this whole situation that we're in with this pandemic, this has totally broken the mold. Absolutely. And it's forcing us to do something different and to react different and to move differently. And so how I think of change is truly being able to reinvent and reimagine your situation, reimagine what you do, because the norms that we were so used to no longer apply. People want to continue to go back to what they were doing pre-COVID, in 2019. We can't. That normalcy in that world is gone. Yeah. Period.
Yeah. And you can kick and scream all you like, but we have been dragged, forced, or whatever. You can either fight it or go with it. If you swim against the current, you are just going to be perpetually frustrated, and you're going to drown in a metaphorical sense. You've got to learn how to swim in this new current because it's only going in one direction. It's not going to turn around.
And look how much it accelerated everything that we do.
Oh, yeah.
How we think and, where we go and don't go. It's just accelerated everything. And so, I get it with those people that are concerned about, not being able to change very quickly because it is scary in the sense of not really having stability. I get it. I'm with them. But I think the best way to mitigate and to manage it is to take it in bite-sized pieces and to work on those areas that that you can change or that you see that there might be an opportunity to change for the better and work on those particular areas as opposed to what we had been thrown into, which was having to just change everything that we do.
And a big part of that is the collaboration aspect as well. If you don't having the humility and managing to manage your own ego to the fact that if you don't know the answers, you're not the only person facing these problems. We in the emergency services, we are not trying to cure cancer. We're not. I'm sure we are trying, but we're not trying to do something revolutionary and try and reinvent the wheel. We've been here for a very, very long time. We're doing something that everybody kind of gets, and we're not the only people doing it. This exists all over the world. It exists all over the country. So let's utilize that collaboration to say, hey, look, we're all struggling with the same problems here. Let's try and get our heads together. Right. What have you tried? What have I tried? Because every form of change and trying to cultivate that change there's going to be failures along the way. But if you're not the only person trying something new, you feel less alone. You feel less alienated and as though you're trying to lead something and you're making all the mistakes and there's no help out there. There is help. Exactly. And that's where I see Equip 2021.
Yes, absolutely. We're not alone. No. And that's the whole point, is providing those resources that people can grab and consume so that they can do something different with them to help themselves.
Love it. Now, I wanted to close with a few personal questions, if I could be so bold.
Sure.
Now, you don't seem like a lady that is unfamiliar with personal development. You're obviously doing something like this to encourage other people to keep grabbing hold of that personal development lever and keep pulling it and seeing what comes out. What aspects of personal development do you currently engage with, and how does it play a role in your life?
Well, I do a number of different things. I'm a ferocious reader. I read everything. And so I just love to consume as much as I can. And I do other things, such as I'm a member of a CEO group. And so that helps me to have other different opinions, people that can sort of pierce at my veil as to what I think I'm going to do and how and why. And then they tell me something different than I should consider. So I'm always looking for other opinions and education and information to help to continue to keep me sharp for one, but also to give me resources so I'm not just, thinking in a vacuum. How can I see those differing opinions and have those impact what I think? Yeah. And, just help to, just expand my mind. So very much a reader. And that's, I would say, is the main crux of what I do.
I hear so many aspects there when you talk about that group that you're involved with, that sort of formal, informal coaching, and also that value of association, being around people that are no better or worse than anybody else, but certainly holding themselves to a different standard and enjoying debate, not fearing having their opinions challenged and stuff like that. But I do love that you're also a reader. They say all great leaders are readers. So is there any, it doesn't have to be favorite or best of all time, but are there any one or two books of any particular sector that you feel have been a real, oh my God, I've got to go back and read that again, that was great? Or have you gifted a particular book to anybody that you think would be really powerful?
Well, gosh, I read a lot of different books. And so I read a lot of Harvard Business Review. I know people are just like, really? But it has so much great information about so many great topics.
It's come a long way as well. It's not too heavy anymore. It used to be quite difficult to read.
Yes, it was, but it really isn't. So it's actually very digestible.
Yeah.
So that's something that I do read a lot. But, it's interesting. There's something that I did read during the pandemic, which was just so appropriate. And I had read it before, but I just picked it up again. And it was Who Moved My Cheese? And so that particular book is about 4 characters, 2 little people and 2 mice. And they're in a maze and they're trying to find the cheese, but the cheese is moved. Yeah. And so it just talks about what happened to the characters that were trying to find the cheese that was there. And then there are others who just went ahead and found other cheese. Yeah. And so it really just deals, and the cheese was really representative of whatever is the success that you were trying to reach in your life. That's basically the representation. But it is, are you going to change? Yeah. Or are you going to try to stick with the status quo? Which role are you going to be in? And so it was very appropriate to pick that up again in the sense of what we were going through with this pandemic. It's like, are you going to just hem and haw and just be upset about things aren't the way that they used to be? Or are you going to just plow forward and create a new reality? And that's what we did.
I read that book and I reread it after I read the study of Blockbuster and Netflix, because that was a very similar analogy for me. People that are married to the way it is, and they spend so much time majoring in minor things and exerting so much energy trying to get back to the way things were, that again, if you just turned around and went with the current, you would realize there's a new iteration, there's a new way for you to continue. If your why is solid, then you can keep doing the thing that you're here to do. You might just have to change your strategy or your tactic, but it's not about changing who you are as such. People think, oh no, you've changed, or you've abandoned that, or you're this, you're that. It's nothing about that. You've got to have, I always say, have really strong views weakly held. And what I mean by that is be really passionate about the things that you know. But if you have been proven that these things have changed or they're no longer the way they were, have that openness to take that on board. And that's such a crucial aspect of where we are right now.
Exactly. And so those people that really didn't survive well through this pandemic, and I'm not talking from a health perspective, I'm just talking about from a mental perspective, were those that truly had trouble with doing something different or getting out of the routine that they were normally in, to see that there actually might be something different and new on the other side, but you just have to put your toe in the water first to see if the water's warm.
Absolutely.
You can't get there unless you touch the water first. And so it's just, but not everybody was there. And I get it and I understand it. I'm not knocking that. I don't want that to come across as it, but I do see that was an issue with many people and still potentially is. So
it's scary. It is scary. But now's the best time to do it, because there's so many people, there's so many other people doing it. Do you know what I mean? So therefore the resources and companies and all that sort of stuff, there's never been so much help from both the government and also companies and organizations to show people how to do that, and you won't seem like you're abandoning ship. That ship has sailed. You need to now find out what lies ahead for you, and that's exactly what we're doing here, I think.
I truly believe if there was ever a time to change, now would be it, because of everybody is going through the same type of cataclysmic shift.
Yeah.
And so now would be the time to create that change for yourself.
Even if you think the time has passed, I remember a great quote where they said the best time to plant a tree was 5 years ago. The second best time is right now. So you might think right now and gone, oh God, I should have done this 6 months ago. That's okay. Do it now. Don't spend another 6 months.
Never too late.
Absolutely, because then you'll be like, I should have done this a year ago. Do it now.
Right. It's never too late.
I wanted to ask you about What's some of the things, and this is not about regrets or anything like that, but you're in a wonderful role now, and what you're putting together for the emergency services and first responders, I think, is incredible. But is there anything you wish you had known when you first started out in this sort of career? Because that may be really useful for people.
Yeah, I think I didn't understand the concept of financial capabilities and capacity, when I was first starting out the business, because I was planning and managing the events. It was something I enjoyed and I was employee number one. And so that's how many companies are started. Yeah. And so I was doing the work. But in terms of growing and how you grow, there are a number of different resources that you need to be able to do it. And number one is money. And so when I first started the company, I didn't have that understanding fully of what I would need to continue forward. I have it now, but I didn't have it then. So that's probably the main thing I did not know, but also culture, the importance of building a company culture, people wanting to work for you and work with you. How do you build that environment that's attractive to people? And so that was something that was important to learn as well.
I think you make a great point there in two aspects. Financial literacy was what I heard when you were talking then, and I think I can certainly speak from a UK perspective. It's something we don't teach, and when I listen to people like Kevin Hart, I hear the same, that a lot of it doesn't get taught in the US either. We teach children how to count, and we teach them how to read. Right. We don't teach them about finances. We don't teach them about cost and percentages and making those decisions, because then when we come into the adult world and we're surrounded by some incredibly talented salespeople, we can get led astray so quickly. And you can, a long time ago, you used to get to zero and that was the end of it. Now you can scream straight past zero and just keep going and going and going if you don't have that financial literacy. So it's great that you've been able to utilize that. And my sincere hope, while some people may think it's a dry subject, I've certainly benefited tremendously from it. I made a number of really bad business decisions maybe 10 years ago, and it's taken me 8 years to recover from them. And I think it's really important that people do see the importance of those, because money's not the most important thing in the world, but it is right up there with oxygen. It is an enabler. You do need to be able to understand it.
You do need it. Yeah, you do need it. I by no means worship it. But it is something that, if you want to do something different with a company, you want to market your services, you want to buy some new technology, you want to do all sorts of things, you need it to do it. You need capital.
Have a healthy relationship with it. Don't fear it. It's a very powerful thing. Right. People fear it. They think it's evil. They say all these strange things about it. It's very interesting. It's just an enabler. It's just a thing. It's just a thing we have given value to.
It's a tool. It's a tool.
Yeah. You said you do a lot of reading and stuff like that. So my next question is around who inspires you, or even growing up, who inspired you? Was it somebody personally, or can you think of someone that truly pushed you to be the confident, articulate lady I see before me?
Oh, that's sweet. I think who inspired me, I came from a family where I had entrepreneurs in my family. Okay. And my grandparents on my mother's side were people who had cleaners, as well as a landscaping company. And so I was able to see them and watch how that particular their companies were able to take care of their families. Okay. And so that gave me the inspiration that, maybe I can do a business. Maybe it is something that I can, make a living from. Yeah. And so that was my inspiration to continue to move forward when I got into college, to pursue moving on with the business as a lifestyle that I actually could make it doing it.
And again, I think now is even easier than it was when we were younger. 20, 30 years ago, it felt like there was less choices. You were either going to be a factory worker, a laborer, a doctor, emergency services, whatever. Now, you can run a business doing anything. You could run a business selling these microphones in front of me, selling whatever, whiteboards, socks, running online courses. This has never been such a great time to be alive. As much as people focus on the negatives, we are surrounded by opportunity and, people who have such a wealth of knowledge. Most of it is hidden in the books as well. We reference back to them books.
That's right.
So much of this stuff has been done before. You've just got to pick it up and read the story of how someone's already been there and probably done 80% similar than what you've already done. So learn it, learn it. Don't make the same mistakes. I love that. I wanted to ask just about a common piece of advice. So is there any piece of advice you think is very common in your industry now that you really think people should ignore?
Well, what I've been seeing over the past 18 months within the industry are the people who really are focused on wanting to just go back to doing what they were doing. And so that's what I would say to ignore. I mean, I've seen it all over our media publications. I've seen it in articles. I've seen it in conversations, talked with people about it. They really just want to get back to where they were, as opposed to embracing the moment that we're in. And so that's what I would say is to ignore where we were, That's gone. But think about how you can bring something new to where we are, and how you can grow with where we are, and how you can do something different and better in terms of, the trials and tribulations we've had over the past 18 months, and how you really can strengthen the delivery of events, reaching people, communicating with them. How can we do this different now that we've had this experience? So that's what I would say, just because I still see so much of it. And it's just such a futile thought process, because we can't go back. That's why. We just can't. And why, in certain instances, do we really want to?
No, that's
because
what I mean.
I believe this opened up better opportunities. So that's how I look at it. It's like, I'm not going back there. Because there are certain things now that are going to be so much better than where we were.
Well, a lot of people, you say they want to go back and stuff like that. Like you say, if you said to them, were you happy back then? They weren't happy, but they were familiar. They had they had certainty.
Right.
I think what they fear now is not that they can't exist or can't be happy in this world. It's the level of uncertainty. But the best the best way to secure your certainty is educate yourself, speak to people, get resourceful. Don't stand back and go, I'm not sure about any of this, so I'm not dare going to take a step forward in case I fall through the floor. Speak to people, ask around, collaborate, exactly what you've done. My final question, I ask all of my guests, but actually, when I was thinking this morning, this is especially relevant to yourself, because it's about, if you had a gigantic billboard in the sky and you had a message that you wanted to share with the world, which ironically is exactly what I think you're going to do with Equip 2021,
right, exactly.
Which makes it especially relevant to yourself.
I'm doing it.
What would we put on that? What is the big piece of guidance, support that you would put on that giant billboard for the world to see?
I think I probably would put something like, you're not too old and it's never too late. Something in that sense of, because we always do put ourselves into those categories. Oh, I can't do it because I don't have this, or I don't have that, or that ship has sailed, or I can't, I can't. No, you're never too old and it's never too late. No matter what age that you are, you can start something new, and you're going to have the benefit of age, to help to, that seasonness. You're going to be seasoned, if you will. Which brings excited. Other opportunities.
Yeah, I'm so excited that I've made so many mistakes in the first 30-something years of my life, because now I've got 50, 60 years to utilize all of this information. And I worry about people. I mean, I don't wish this upon anybody, and I know the pandemic has delivered a number of big hits for a few people, but I do fear people that haven't hit their proverbial rock bottom. And I don't mean that from a health or a financial perspective, but if they've not had something that's leveled them, where they believe something was the case and that was no longer the case, and they've made it through, if they've not had that yet, it's going to come. It is going to come. So just be ready for it. Don't worry about it. Embrace it. Empower yourself so that you're ready for it when it comes, because this is not the first challenge and setback we're going to face. These are going to come and come and come and come. So ride the wave.
That's absolutely right.
Equip yourself.
Ride the wave and keep moving. Keep moving forward. That's most important.
Jennifer, I've absolutely loved that conversation with you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your Sunday, of all days, rest day, to be here with us and get it across the pond. Thank you so much for that. I really look forward to speaking with you soon.
Thank you.
I'm going to put all of the stuff that we've discussed, including Who Moved My Cheese. That's going to be in the notes below for people that want to go and find it. But most specifically, how to get involved with Equip 2021. For people that are unfamiliar, it's going to be in the notes. But just tell us, how can we learn a little bit more about it? Where do people need to go?
They can go to our company website at jdc-events.com. And when you get on the homepage, there's a link called Equip. Just click on that and you'll see everything that you need to participate.
It is that simple. Jennifer, thank you so much. Send my love to the family, and I look forward to speaking with you soon.
Thank you again. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, there you have it, boys and girls. That was my conversation with Jennifer. If you want to learn more about Equip 2021, an ambitious new event connecting first responders, then go on, drop down and check in the notes below. You will find all of the details of things we've discussed there. Be sure to jump into our emails as well. That is where you're going to hear the utmost information when new episodes drop, and also when different members of our incredible partnerships do those big giveaways to our listeners. That is where you're going to hear about it. Get on the email list. We don't fill your inbox with rubbish, and we don't go giving your email addresses to anybody else either. So all that's left to say is thanks once again to you, yes, you, the listener, for taking time out of your busy, busy life to be here with us. The podcast is going from strength to strength, and that is a result of the incredible people we have listening in. That's you right there. Please look after yourself, stay happy, stay healthy, stay hungry, support your emergency services wherever you are, and we will see you again real soon right here on the Firefighters Podcast.